James Adair's book, History of the American Indians, published in London in 1775, has always been regarded and treated by ethnologists and historians as a reliable authority on the Southern Indians, as well as on Southern history in a period of no little obscurity. The book has long been rare, selling in 1930 at $100 a copy. Recognizing its value as source material on Southern history of the colonial period, the National Society of Colonial Dames of America and Tennessee determined to bring out a reprint, which should be annotated to supplement in some degree Adair's own detailed and vivid description of life among the Indians of the southeast of the Mississippi River, of the Indian trade and traders, and of intrigues and wars that involved both the red and the white races, and the years of struggle for the possession of the Mississippi Valley by the French and English. The writer was asked to undertake the editorial work. The task of annotation has proceeded on the basis of a reckoning that Adair's book is not true to name a history of the American Indians, but of its being an account of the principal tribes of the Indians of the Southeast and of their countries. His work is all the more unique and useful in that such is its real scope, and the editor's notes, speaking generally, have been brought within the same limitation. The London edition carried no index, a lack that impaired its usability. One is supplied in this reprint. The value of Adair's work as showing the relations between the Indians and the English traders was recognized, and a German translation appeared at Breslau in 1782. It must be admitted that a very disproportionate space is given to the hypothesis that the American Indians are descended from the lost 10 tribes of Israel. Puritan minister and preacher Thomas Thorogood, adopting an old idea of the Spanish Las Casas, had first maintained this theory in English in 1650 in his book, Jews in America. Both Roger Williams, a minister, and Jonathan Edwards, a preacher, seemed rather inclined to favor the view, which, as elaborately set forth by Adair, has since found champions in Elias Boudinot, Star in the West, 1816, and in Edward King, Viscount Kingsborough. Among the points of similarity between the Jews and Indians, Adair emphasized the division into tribes, worship of a great spirit, Jehovah, notions of a theocracy, of ablutions and uncleanness, cities of refuge, and practices as regards divorce and raising seed to a deceased brother. The bias imparted by this theory to many of Adair's remarks led Volney to condemn the whole book in his book, Tableau du climat et du sol de états unis. The second half of the book is more strictly an account of the Catawba, Cherokee, Muskogee, Choctaw, and Chickasaw nations. Lord Kingsborough reprinted the whole of the first part of Adair's work in the 8th volume of his sumptuous Mexican Antiquities, with an appendix of notes and illustrations from unedited works by French and Spanish authors, affording the most satisfactory proofs of Adair's veracity in the minutest particulars. Adair's map of the American Indian nations is partially reproduced in Windsor's book, History of America. In the introduction, it is purposed to give as full and accurate an account of Adair, the man, and of his book, as is feasible. In order to compass this, a fairly wide investigation of archives was entered upon and a correspondence conducted. To Professor R. L. Meriwether of the Department of History of the University of South Carolina, Emmett Starr of St. Louis, historian of the Cherokee Indians, John R. Swanton of the Bureau of American Ethnology, Washington, D.C., W. J. Gent of the staff of the Dictionary of American Biography, Judge Samuel Martin Young of Dixon Springs, Tennessee, Dr. P. M. Hamer of the Department of History of the University of Tennessee, and Miss Mary U. Rothrock, librarian of the Lawson-McGee Library, Knoxville, Tennessee. The editor is under obligation for aid given in its preparation. An expression of gratitude cannot be withheld. The editor, also, has had the hearty cooperation at all times of the officers of the society which has promoted the enterprise, not with a view to financial profit, but under patriotic prompting. There are many so-called African Americans who study the scriptures and have come to the idea that these scriptures apply to them. The Hebrew Israelites believe that the totality of the Holy Scriptures identifies a people who are under the promised curses of Moses that are found in the book of Leviticus, chapter 26, and in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. Our review of history seems to substantiate these claims. However, because there is so much world history that is hidden or missing, These Hebrew Israelites have begun to piece together the curses of Moses with the known history, and in so doing, they have revealed a belief that has been the contention of many people who believe the same. Many of these are mentioned in this book by James Adair. In my opinion, James Adair's book is the most powerful book in this regard, simply because he is the only man who actually lived among the Aboriginal people of the southeast region of America. He reveals to the reader an account of these Aborigines that confirms the ideology of the Hebrew Israelites. The notes of Adair are indicated by asterisk and other reference marks, those of the editor by numerals. In cases where the editor has extended notes of the author, the latter's work is followed by A and the editor's by W. The author's punctuation, spelling, and capitalization have been followed, but the old form of S has been changed to the modern. For the convenience of students in running references to pages of the original edition, its page numbers are carried into the body of the text between brackets. Adair purposed the publication of his book several years before the date of its actual London publication in 1775. In the South Carolina Gazette of September 7, 1769, it was said, an account of the origin of the primitive inhabitants and a history of those numerous warlike tribes of Indians situated to the westward of Charlestown are subjects hitherto unattempted by any pen. Such an attempt has been made by Mr. James Adair, a gentleman who has been conversant among the Cherokees, Chickasaws, Choctaws, etc. for 30-odd years past, and who, by the assistance of a liberal education, a long experience among them, and a genius naturally formed for curious inquiries, has written essays on their origin, language, religion, customary methods of making war and peace, etc. It was also announced that the author was going over to England soon to prepare for publication. The Savannah, Georgia Gazette of October 11, 1769, carried a similar item, of date New York, February 27. The Christian faith today is all over the world. Many, if not all of these Christians, believe in the one true God of Israel, but none of them are seeking to find his children. It appears that the world of Christianity is content with leaving them as the lost tribes. While at the same time, there are people on the earth today who strongly believe that they are actually the people who fit the curses that are located in the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy. The most convincing aspect of Scripture that identifies the two kingdoms of Israel are the curses that point to a worldwide captivity of these two kingdoms, and that they will lose their names, culture, and language, and would no more remember who they are according to the curses written in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. This worldwide captivity is undeniable and is recorded in every country on the planet. The dark-skinned race of people who were and are the subjects of this captivity have no recorded history as to the lineage from which they come. Many, such as the Hebrew Israelites, are beginning to put the pieces of history back together, utilizing biblical prophecy and world history in order to do so. By identifying eyewitnesses and their writings on the subject of the hidden Hebrews, they have begun to reveal the identity of the lost tribes. By seeking to understand the curses, they are pulling the curtains back in order to see the most probable truth as it relates to these forgotten people of the curses. Before the Hebrew Israelites began understanding the revelations of these curses, there were white men of the Christian faith who also believed in the necessity of finding the children of the Most High God of Israel. James Adair lived among the Aboriginal indigenous people located in the southeastern parts of America, and although he did not go there specifically to find the lost tribes of Israel, he did, however, believe that he had done so. For 40 years, James Adair recorded many aspects of the lives of these Aborigines that they called Indians. Many preachers, teachers, pastors, and historians anticipated reading the book of his discoveries, although his book was available to the world. The findings of James Adair have been hidden from the descendants of the captives or enslaved peoples of North America for over 200 years. On June 11, 1812, former President Thomas Jefferson responded to former President John Adams. In it, Jefferson writes, "You ask if there is any book that pretends to give any account of the traditions of the Indians, or how one can acquire an idea of them. Some scanty accounts of their traditions, but fuller of their customs and characters, are given us by most of the early travelers among them. These were chiefly French. Lafitau, among them, and Adair, an Englishman, have written on this subject, the former 2 volumes, the latter one, all in 4/2. But unluckily Lafitau had in his head a preconceived theory on the mythology, manners, institutions, and government of the ancient nations of Europe, Asia, and Africa, and seems to have entered on those of America only to fit them into the same frame, and to draw from them a confirmation of his general theory. He keeps up a perpetual parallel, in all those articles, between the Indians of America and the ancients of the other quarters of the globe. He selects therefore all the facts, and adopts all the falsehoods which favor his theory, and very gravely retails such absurdities as zeal for a theory could alone swallow. He was a man of much classical and scriptural reading, and has rendered his book not unentertaining. He resided 5 years among the northern Indians as a missionary, but collects his matter much more from the writings of others than from his own observation. Adair too had his kink. He believed all the Indians of America to be descended from the Jews, the same laws, usages, rites, and ceremonies, the same sacrifices, priests, prophets, fasts, and festivals, almost the same religion, and that they all spoke Hebrew. For although he writes particularly of the southern Indians only, the Catawbas, Creeks, Cherokees, Chickasaws, and Choctaws, with whom alone he was personally acquainted, yet he generalizes whatever he found among them, and brings himself to believe that the 100 languages of America, differing fundamentally every one from every other, as much as Greek from Gothic, have yet all one common prototype. He was a trader, a man of learning, a self-taught Hebraist, a strong religionist, and of as sound a mind as Don Quixote in whatever did not touch his religious chivalry. His book contains a great deal of real instruction on its subject, only requiring the reader to be constantly on his guard against the wonderful obliquities of his theory. The point I want to make is this. The truth, or even the theory, that the aboriginal Indians of North America could be the lost children of the God of Israel has been with us for over 200 years. This begs the question, why haven't these books been available to the descendants of the enslaved? Argument number 1 begins with these words.
As the Israelites were divided into tribes, and had chiefs over them, so the Indians divide themselves. Each tribe forms a little community within the nation, and as the nation hath its particular symbol, so hath each tribe the badge from which it is denominated. The sachem of each tribe is a necessary party in conveyances and treaties, to which he affixes the mark of his tribe, as a corporation with us doth their public seal. If we go from nation to nation among them, we shall not find one, who doth not lineally distinguish himself by his respective family.
Argument number 2 begins with these words.
By a strict, permanent, divine precept, the Hebrew nation were ordered to worship at Jerusalem, Jehovah the true and living God, and who by the Indians is styled Yahweh, which the 72 interpreters, either from ignorance or superstition, have translated Adonai, and is the very same as the Greek Kyrios, signifying Sir, Lord, or Master, which is commonly applied to earthly potentates, without the least signification of, or relation to, that most great and awful name, which describes the divine essence, who naturally and necessarily exists of himself, without beginning or end. The ancient heathens, it is well known, worshipped a plurality of gods, gods which they formed to themselves, according to their own liking, as various as the countries they inhabited, and as numerous, with some, as the days of the year. But these Indian Americans pay their religious devoir to Lokishtaholo-Aba, the great, beneficent, supreme, Holy Spirit of fire, who resides, as they think, above the clouds, and on earth also with unpolluted people.
Argument 3 begins with these words.
Agreeable to the theocracy, or divine government of Israel, the Indians think the deity to be the immediate head of their state. All the nations of Indians are exceedingly intoxicated with religious pride, and have an inexpressible contempt of the white people. Unless we accept those half-savage Europeans, who are become their proselytes. Nothing is the most favorable name they give us, in set speeches, Even the Indians who were formerly bred in amity with us, and in enmity to the French, used to call us, in their war orations, Hatakuk Prus, the accursed people.
Argument 4 begins with these words.
We have abundant evidence of the Jews believing in the ministration of angels. During the Old Testament dispensation, their frequent appearances, and their services, on earth, are recorded in the oracles, which the Jews themselves receive as given by divine inspiration. And St. Paul in his epistle addressed to the Hebrews, speaks of it as their general opinion, that angels are ministering spirits to the good and righteous on earth. And that it was the sentiment of those Jews who embraced Christianity, is evident from Acts 12. Where an angel is said to deliver Peter from his imprisonment, and when the maid reported that Peter stood at the gate knocking, his friends doubting, said, "It is his angel." Women also are ordered to have their heads covered in religious assemblies, because of the presence of the angels, and to observe silence, the modest custom of the eastern countries. The Indian sentiments and traditions are the same. They believe the higher regions to be inhabited by good spirits, whom they call Hatak Ishtahulo, and Nana Ishtahulo, holy people, and relations to the Great, Holy One.
Argument number 5 begins with these words.
The Indian language and dialects appear to have the very idiom and genius of the Hebrew. Their words and sentences are expressive, concise, emphatical, sonorous, and bold, and often, both in letters and signification, synonymous with the Hebrew language. It is a common and old remark that there is no language in which some Hebrew words are not to be found. Probably Hebrew was the first and only language, till distance of time and place introduced a change, and then soon followed a mixture of others. The accidental position of the characters might also coincide with some Hebrew words, in various dialects, without the least intention. As the true pronunciation of the Hebrew characters is lost in a considerable degree, it is too difficult a task for a skillful Hebraist to ascertain a satisfactory identity of language between the Jews and American Aborigines, much more so to an Indian trader who professes but a small acquaintance with the Hebrew, and that acquired by his own application. However, I will endeavor to make up the deficiency of Hebrew with a plenty of good solid Indian roots. The Indian nouns have neither cases nor declensions. They are invariably the same, through both numbers, after the Hebrew manner. In their verbs, they likewise sometimes use the preterperfect, instead of the present tense of the indicative mood, as blasas ire, a pisar, yesterday I went and saw, and imako ire, a pisar, now I go and see.
James Adair talks about the observations on the color, shape, temper, and dress of the Indians of America. He begins by writing this.
The Indians are of a copper or red clay color, and they delight in everything which they imagine may promote and increase it. Accordingly, they paint their faces with vermilion as the best and most beautiful ingredient. If we consider the common laws of nature and providence, we shall not be surprised at this custom, for everything loves best its own likeness and place in the creation, and is disposed to ridicule its opposite. If a deformed son of burning Africa was to paint the devil, he would not do it in black colors, nor delineate him with a shagged coarse woolly head, nor with thick lips, a short flat nose, or clumsy feet, like those of a bear. His devil would represent one of a different nation or people. But was he to draw an agreeable picture, according to the African taste, he would daub it all over with sooty black. All the Indians are so strongly attached to, and prejudiced in favor of, their own color, that they think as meanly of the whites, as we possibly can do of them. The English traders among them experience much of it, and are often very glad to be allowed to pass muster with the Indian chieftains, as fellow brethren of the human species. One instance will sufficiently show in what flattering glasses they view themselves.
James Adair lived among the Aboriginal indigenous people who were called Indians in North America for 40 years. And in that 40 years, he wrote down all of what he witnessed with his own eyes. It is of my opinion that James Adair is the most reliable source with regard to his very own eyewitness accounts. Former presidents John Adams and Thomas Jefferson wrote to each other concerning this very book, and yet the information given by James Adair has been hidden from the record for almost 300 years. This book is packed with information for those who also believe that it is entirely possible that the children of Israel are indeed the Aboriginal indigenous people who were found by Christopher Columbus and Hernando de Soto. But it is the hidden work of James Adair that speaks volumes concerning these Aboriginals. The Black Ancestry Network group will provide you with a link so that you will be able to download a free copy of this eye-opening book. Remember, those who will not treat you right are not going to teach you right. If you believe that this content was informative, please like and share it with your friends and family. If you believe that this content was helpful, please consider becoming a member of this channel, as it really does help. If you would like to see more book reviews and/or book suggestions, please let us know by utilizing the comment section. We would love to have your feedback. And before you go, remember to click the link in the description area if you would like to download your very own copy of The History of the American Indians by James Adair. This bang content will end in 3, 2, 1.